Hare Krishna. Today's chapter is number 8, chapter number 8, which is Akshara Brahma Yoga, attaining the supreme, right? And before we commence, we always pay our respects and our obeisance to a temple deity, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, ISKCON Mangaluru, Hare Krishna, and our pranams to our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadi Satarine, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadara, Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yesterday's chapter was getting to know the glories of Krishna, right? And that was how we started yesterday. So yesterday, the process started with Krishna explaining why hearing is more important rather than looking or estimating, right? That's why Krishna says Takshruno, right? Hear from me, correct? And then Krishna tells about the different opulences. One who understands the opulences and understands the position of Krishna, what does it do? It makes you surrender to Krishna, right? And then we examined those four types of people who do not surrender to Krishna. Then Krishna discussed the blockers, right? One of the main blocker is desire, something to do in the material worlds. This leads to demigod worship and impersonalism, right? So Krishna wants to bring everyone to him, right? And so he has plans of how to bring them from delusion to devotion. So these are the 30 verses that we examined yesterday broadly. And let's have a look at today's overview of the chapter. Arjuna is back to asking questions, right? So yesterday's chapter, Arjuna did not ask any questions. Today's chapter, Arjuna asks 8 questions. So he's catching up. You see, he's listening very carefully. Krishna says, Takshruno, right? So he listens, and then when he listens, he has questions that he has to ask. And those questions are asked on our behalf after all, right? So one of the last questions is how to think of Krishna at the time of death. That happened in the last chapter. Krishna says, you can attain me even if you think of me at the time of death, right? So then that entails several questions from Arjuna, which is that 8 questions I told you about in the beginning of the chapter. That's verses 1 and 2, right? Now from verses 3 and 4, Krishna answers 7 questions. From questions 1 to 7, Krishna answers all those 7 questions in 2 verses, right? And the rest of the chapter, Krishna addresses for that last question. And what was the last question? The last question is how to remember Krishna at the time of death, right? And that has a lot of significance attached to it. That time of what the person thinks about at the time of death. And that we will examine by way of 2 short stories today, right? Both from Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Ajamila and story of sage Bharata. Okay. And then we, of course, there's Yoga Mishra Bhakti. I'm sorry, I still haven't finished this. Yoga Mishra Bhakti is yoga. Sorry, Mishra means mixed, right? So here yoga is mixed with bhakti, right? And then we see about remembering Krishna through pure bhakti also. So what is the result of remembering Krishna at the time of death? One goes to the spiritual world. But what is the spiritual world? Krishna gives us a glimpse of that spiritual world as against the material world in this chapter itself. And Krishna emphasizes once again that pure bhakti is the highest way of reaching Krishna and the easiest way of reaching Krishna, right? So now, primarily, this chapter is going to deal with the 8 questions that Arjuna is asking now. Okay, so let's examine what those questions are. 8.1. Arjuna inquired, "O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me." 8.2. How does this Lord of sacrifice live in the body, and in which part does he live? O Madhusudana. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So question number 1 is, who is Brahman, right? Question number 2 is, what is the self? 3 is, what are fruitive activities? 4 is, what is the material manifestation? 5 is, what are the demigods? 6 is, how does this Lord of sacrifice live in the body? 7 is, and which part does he live in? Now, all these 7 questions In just 2 verses, Krishna answers. Now it is the last question, that is, how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? That constitutes the rest of the chapter. So there's a lot of importance. Please understand that there's a lot of importance, significance attached to this portion of the question, right? But then what is the reason for Arjuna to ask these questions? These questions are raised by Arjuna due to Krishna's reply in chapters 7, in the previous chapter, verse 29 and 30, right? So let's just quickly rehash what 29 and 30 said. 29 was that intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me and in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. Now, what is 7.30? Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods and as the one sustaining all the sacrifices, can with steadfast mind understand and know me even at the time of death. Right? So it continues from here. It's because of this observation by Krishna that you can know me even at the time of death, that Arjuna fires these 8 questions at Krishna, right? So Arjuna is always asking questions. So, right. So this was the 2 questions which based on which this chapter is continuing. Okay. Krishna says, if you want freedom from suffering such as old age and death, remember the 4 miseries that I mentioned. Let us see how much you remember. Okay, so there are 4 miseries I mentioned, right? Birth, death, old age, and can you please post in the chat? What is the 4th?
Birth, death, old age, and disease.
Oh, very nice. Very good. Very good. Hare Krishna.
Birth, death, old age, and disease.
And disease. Very nice. Kirtana Mata is also right. Sickness is also a synonym. So that's fine. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Right. Then there is the that's what they say, right? Old birth, death, old age, and diseases. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, right? So that's the phrase. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, at the end of this class, we will also have a poll, right? So I'll be posing 3 questions from this chapter. And all those 3 questions will be displayed before you, and you just have to choose, like how you choose in the quiz, but the quiz is different. The quiz has 10 chapters, 10 questions usually, right? This has only 3. So this is just to quickly go through the chapter and see if you have appreciated and understood the message which was mentioned in this chapter. So it'll be primarily from the class itself, right? It's not be difficult questions. They're quite easy to handle, but the point is you have to pay attention to answer those questions. That is the idea, right? To make sure that the devotee pays attention in class, right? Right. Hare Krishna. So let's proceed. I've made a table. Okay, so these are the questions and this is the answer, right? So the column on the left has all the questions that Arjuna asks. The answers that Krishna gives is all on the right. Okay, so let's see. Brahman. What is Brahman is the first question that Arjuna answers. What is Krishna's answer? Answer by Krishna is Brahman means Jiva. That is the soul within us, which is the indestructible living entity. We saw this in chapter 2, right? The soul cannot be destroyed, nor is it born, right? So what is Brahman is the question by Arjuna. The answer by Krishna is it is Jiva, right? And then the next question is, what is Adhyatma? That is, who is the controller of the body? And Krishna says it is the soul that controls the body. The nature of Jiva is to control the body, right? So for the second question, what is Adhyatma? Controller of the body. Krishna's answer is nature of Jiva, right? That is the self. Then third question is, what is karma, right? And Krishna answers actions leading to a material body, right? Now that Krishna says is karma, basically activities which entail gathering of karma, good and bad both. Okay, and then the fourth question by Arjuna is, what is Adi Bhuta? Adi Bhuta is material manifestation, literal meaning. And Krishna says the 3 modes of material nature, Sattvic, Rajas, and Tamas, right? So that Krishna says is what is the material manifestation, Adi Bhuta. Then comes the important question, who is the Adi Daiva? Okay, and Adi Daiva is, Krishna's answer is universal form which includes all the demigods, right? So demigods are compared to different parts of Krishna's universal body. There is an entire chapter for that in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So Adi Daiva, Krishna says, is the universal form that he displays in chapter 11. We'll come to that in a couple of days, right? Then the 6th question is, what is the Adi Yajna, right? That the enjoyer, who is the Adi Yajna, the enjoyer of sacrifice, Krishna says is Paramatma. And we know who is Paramatma, right? Paramatma is Sri Krishna himself. Okay. And the next question is, where does this Adi Yajna reside, right? And Krishna says in the heart of all. So that super soul is Paramatma, of course, and that is also called as Adi Yajna. And where does the Adi Yajna live? It lives in the heart of all living entities. Now, for the last question, how to remember Krishna at the time of death? The short answer was practice remembrance throughout the life, right? That is the short answer to on how to remember Krishna at the time of death. Because unless, and this is the takeaway of the chapter, right? Unless you remember Krishna during life, you will not be able to remember him at the time of death. Because Krishna says that if you remember me at the time of death, that one thought is sufficient to take you directly to Goloka Vrindavan. Okay, there's a specific verse also for that. It's a guarantee, as a matter of fact. Okay, and so that those are the questions broadly. This is the entire chapter. Okay, and we are now going to examine this eighth question that Arjuna poses in detail. Okay, 8.3. The Supreme Lord said, the indestructible transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma or fruitive activities. Right. So what we are seeing now here is the verse which answers four of Arjuna's questions. Right. So I told you that Krishna answers seven of Arjuna's questions in two verses. So 8.3 is one verse. 8.4 is the next verse where he answers three questions. And then, as I mentioned, the last question is the entire chapter. Okay. Now, in this, what is Krishna saying? Brahman is important. That's why it's highlighted in red, right? See, sometimes, no, I mean, not, it's not unique to Sanskrit, but then Sanskrit has this more often. Words change meaning depending on the context in which they are found. For example, in Hindi, when you say kal, it depends upon the context whether you're meaning tomorrow or yesterday or yesterday, right? So that becomes clear only from the context. Likewise, in English, the word bar can have very many meanings, right? Like forbid or handlebar or bar at law, right? So there are different meanings for a word which will depend upon the context in which that word is found, right? And that is to be understood in that context. And only when you understand the context can you use the word, can you understand what the word means. Now, in this context, Prabhupada explains that the word Brahman has three meanings, right? First is the soul, of course. Then second is also the material nature. And the third is the impersonal effulgence of Krishna, which is called the Brahma Jyoti. Okay. Now, depending on the context, you can assign this meaning to these three meanings to the word Brahman, right? But in this context, Srila Prabhupada in his purport says Brahman means the soul, right? Now, Krishna explains further. He says that the eternal nature of the Brahman, that is the soul, is called the self, right? An action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, because karma always entails action, good and bad, and because of that, because of which you are given a body depending on what you have actually done, right? Now, people usually make a big deal out of karma because Krishna, we should understand this, that karma is not the first portion of Bhagavad Gita, which is Karma Yoga chapters, is not as important as Bhakti Yoga chapters. That's why, in fact, Krishna gives very less time in explaining what karma is. For example, in chapter 4, 17th verse, it is stated that the intricacies of karma are very hard to understand, right? So we examined the sloka in this course also, if you remember, when we dealt with the akarma, vikarma, and then karma also, right? So for this reason, Krishna does not attach much importance to karma, because you don't know what it entails, what will happen when you do a particular act, right? Yes, it is a recognized way to reach the Godhead, but then, as it's mentioned, it's not the recommended way, right? See, it's like this. There is an elevator, and then there are stairs. You want to go to the 35th floor. Why would you choose the stairs, right? So karma here is the stairs, and bhakti is the elevator. That is why even Krishna did not spend much time on the Karma Yoga chapters. Even in Srimad Bhagavatam, only in Ajamila's story is karma even mentioned, right? So we have to assign our priorities correctly. That's why again and again Bhakti Yoga is the best and is most recommended way to reach Krishna. And the easiest way of bhakti is to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, right? So it's very easy to do. Somehow we always find a way to complicate things and confound it. As such, spirituality is a very simple thing. Krishna makes it very easy for us to reach him, but then we think it's too easy, that that it cannot be that just simply by chanting the Lord's name that you will reach Krishna. You want to do so many other more difficult things. Let us try to be simple and try to be consistent. That is sufficient. And if, of course, it's the easiest thing to do, right? Because in the Kali Yuga, we don't have that amount of lifespan which is required to meditate on the Lord. And we don't have that amount of resources to spend like in the other two yugas, that is required temple worship, sacrifices. It's just not possible in the Kali Yuga, right? I've also mentioned this earlier, right? In Kali Yuga, what is that? What Srimad Bhagavatam says, you will have Manda Smritihi. You will not be intelligent. You will not have a good memory. You will have Alpa Ayushyaha. You will not have a long lifespan, and you will be, what is the third one? Yes, fortunate. You will be less fortunate. Manda Bhagyasya. Manda Bhagyasya. Right? So that is also less. Fortune is also less. So when you are imposed with liabilities like we are in this particular yuga, Krishna has made it simple for us, but then we just not able to make it take advantage of that simple that simple way that Krishna is explaining in this Bhakti Yoga chapters. But then we just want to follow those complicated paths, which is more difficult. See, what happens when you start following complicated paths is you tend to give up, because you have a breaking point, right? Every person has a breaking point. Now you will keep continuing on that path, but then when it becomes more and more difficult, you would eventually give it up, right? And that is the problem with those other methods, because it is not as easy as Krishna is making it. So let's just follow the easier path. Just chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, have prasadam, offer your work to the Lord with devotion, and you're there, right? So let's proceed to the next verse. Let's see what Krishna says with respect to the other three questions that Arjuna asks. All right. Okay. Right. 8.4. Physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord, represented as the super soul, dwelling in the heart of every embodied body, right? So Arjuna's question, if you recall, the fourth question was, what was physical nature, right? That is Adibhuta, right? So Krishna says Adibhuta is the material form of nature, right? The universe, then Krishna explains further, the universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, that is Adi Daiva, right? And then Krishna again explains what is the super soul, Adi Yajna. Where does he live? He lives in the heart. All this is clear from this verse itself, right? The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord. That is important. And I am that Lord, represented as the super soul, dwelling in the heart of every embodied being, right? So where does Krishna live? He lives in every one of us as a living entity, not just one of us. Anything which has life, Krishna is there as the super soul, right? Okay, there are two things that I wanted to mention here. What is mutable? The meaning here of mutable. Mutable here means changing, right? We see that in our everyday life. Seasons are changing, the trees are changing, every material is subject to change. What was that? Heraclitus said, change is the only concept, only constant, right? That's what Heraclitus said, the Greek philosopher. But then that is not entirely correct, because Krishna is the only constant. Even change is not constant, because change, for it to operate, it requires a world, and then this world is also subject to that change, right? So only Krishna is the constant, right? So the universe that we are living in is in its cosmic form, not in the transcendental form or spiritual or eternal form, right? So cosmic form is the universal form which Krishna displays, as I mentioned in chapter 11, the universal form, Vishwarupa, right? The universal form is manifested when this material world is manifested, but then it is not manifested when the material world is wound up. This again, we will see this in chapter 13. Once you cross chapter 12, we have a spike in philosophy. It gets very technical, because then that is, of course, the Jnana Yoga chapters, right? So knowledge, it requires a lot of application of mind to understand what Krishna is trying to say, right? So though that, of course, is a different thing, we'll deal with that bridge when we come to it. So then what was the last question? Adi Yajna, right? So Adi Yajna is, of course, the enjoyer of all sacrifices. We have already seen Krishna saying that he is the ultimate enjoyer of all the sacrifices, right? So all the 7 questions are answered, right? Now the rest of the chapter, as I mentioned, is about the 8th question. which is how does one remember Krishna at the time of death. Okay, so this is an important sloka. 8.5. Hare Krishna, Roshni Mataji. What happened?
Sulochana Mataji.
No, Roshni Mataji. She's not
She's not there.
co-host. No, she's there, but she's not co-host, is it? Oh, I can't make them co-host. Mataji, can you please make a co-host? She's not co-host. Roshni, Roshni.
Mataji, can you raise your hand?
Sorry for the break. Interruption because of technical difficulties.
Mataji, you can.
Yes, Hare Krishna Mataji. Please go ahead. 8.5.
प्रभुजी हरे कृष्णा गुरुजी
Hare Krishna.
अंतकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरं व्यप्रयाति समद्भावं याति नास्त्यत्र संशयः.
And whoever at the time of death quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Okay, it's a simple sloka that requires no explanation actually, but then we should understand one concept which emerges out of this. People who are living in Krishna consciousness are actually trying to pass this test, right? See, when we go to school or college, we have to go through class tests, monthly tests, term tests, right? There's so many kinds of tests, but then the final test is the one that really tests whether you are going to be qualified for the next class or not, right? So if you're going from 6th to 7th, it's the final exam that really is taken into account to see if you are going to pass from the 6th to the 7th, right? Now, you may have done well in all the interim tests, but then if you fail the final test, there is no promotion, right? The word here, whoever, that's the word used here, right? Whoever is important. See, anybody can be Krishna consciousness. The only eligibility is whether you want to be Krishna conscious or you don't want to be Krishna conscious. You want to have it or you don't want to have it, right? Now, this verse is also a verse of reassurance, right? Because Krishna says there is no doubt. Only Krishna can give such an assurance, right? Guarantee. He gives a guarantee that if you remember me at the time of death, then you will at once attain to my nature. And what happens when you attain to Krishna's nature? You go directly to Goloka Vrindavan, right? So nasti here, the word nasti here is not. It means not or no. Okay, and atra is means a little bit, and samsayaha is doubt, right? That's why we saw this word yesterday also, samsaya and asamsayaha, which means doubt and without doubt. So here Krishna is saying that there is little doubt that you will reach, that there's no doubt. Basically, it translates to mean that there is no doubt, right? And can anyone tell me what this picture here denotes? I'm sure you'd all find it quite an easy thing to answer. In the chat box, can you post what this picture is? Yes, that's right. Yes. So what is Bhishma doing right now? Can anyone say that?
Bhishma Pitamaha.
Yes, that's true. But what is Bhishma doing?
Bhishma Pitamaha.
Correct. That's correct. But what is Bhishma doing right now? I mean, all the people are gathered around him. So what is he doing?
Sharaschaya.
Yes. That is the answer I was looking for. Right?
He's waiting for Uttarayanam.
Perfect, Mataji. Very good. Okay, so this is a very exalted situation.
He's thinking of Krishna.
Yes.
Thinking of Krishna.
That's the answer I wanted, right? So let me just explain that a little more. This is described by Ved Vyas in the first canto itself, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th chapter. Okay, Bhishma is on his deathbed, right? And Krishna tells Yudhishthira and other Pandavas to go and learn from him about the different Dharma Shastras. Okay, so the Dharma Shastras deal with different ways of preaching and ruling, basically, right? So Bhishma is giving lessons on how to rule, right? And when the time comes for him to leave the body, you remember he had the boon of Ichha Mrityu, right? He could leave his body whenever he wished. Death would come only when Bhishma wished it to come, right? So when the sun was moving towards the north and it was setting for the day, Bhishma falls silent, right? This again is explained in in Canto 1, 9th chapter. Vedas compares that silence of Bhishma to the silence that occurs when the birds go quiet at night. Okay, the description is so beautiful. And then what does Bhishma do? Bhishma fixes his concentration on the four-handed form of Krishna. That is the Narayana features, like how he appears in Vaikundam, like with the Sankha Chakra Gada Padma, right? So you would have all had certainly seen a painting or an idol where Vishnu is holding the conch shell, the Sudarshana Chakra, the Gada, and the lotus flower, right? So that is the form in Vaikunda, right? So then Bhishma requests Krishna to show his four-handed form. Okay, and Krishna of course displays his four-handed form. But then you should imagine this from Bhishma's perspective. He was a royal, right? He was a Maharati. That is someone who could fight with the strength of 1,000 elephants, right? And he had large kith and kin, right? But he did not think of any of them, right? His focus was only Krishna. His dying conversation was exclusively about Krishna, and he describes in vivid detail about Krishna and his potencies, even in his last breaths, right? So the point is this: if you get time, please make time to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, the descriptions that Vedvyas has given for this scene, oh, it is just so beautiful, so vividly described, right? It is truly something that every one of us should read. But once if you feel comfortable with the principles that is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita as it is, this book by Srila Prabhupada, please go through. There are 12 cantos. It's a vast literature, and there is a small story perhaps I should tell you about how Srimad Bhagavatam came to be written by Vedvyas. So Vedvyas has compiled all the Vedas, right? He's compiled all the Vedas. Everything is set, okay, but he's not satisfied, right? So Narada passes along, and Vedvyas happens to tell him that you see, I've done all of my duty. I've compiled all the Vedas, but why is it that I'm not feeling the satisfaction? I'm not feeling the happiness. I'm not feeling the bliss that I expected that I would feel, because this was my dharma. I had to complete this. I've completed it, but then it still I don't feel satisfied. Why is that? And then Narada says, all right, you've done everything, but tell me, have you written something which exclusively glorifies Krishna, right? And that's how Vedvyas realizes, oh my God, I have missed out on that. And Srimad Bhagavatam was composed, right? So it's a huge volume of. One difference about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam we should be able to appreciate. In Bhagavad Gita, God speaks about himself, okay? But in Srimad Bhagavatam, all of them except Krishna speaks, right? So it is from the devotee's point of view about the glories of Krishna. And it is a book which is truly, if Vedvyasa was here, he will sweep all the awards that we have, from the Nobel Prize for literary works right up till the Booker Prize. Everything will be clean swept by Vedvyas if he was there today, right? Okay, I'm sorry, I knocked the mic off. I hope that's okay. I'm audible, right? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So, so this is just a short backstory about Srimad Bhagavatam. Right, let's proceed further. Okay, yeah, this is another interesting story. Oh my God, this chapter. I mean, I think there's a lot of stories here, right? Towards the end of their Vanavas. No, I'm going to tell you the story, but I must tell the purpose why I'm explaining the story, right? So this is a story where the importance of death is explained by Yudhishthira, right? So towards the end of their Vanvas, the Pandavas were in a forest, okay, and they could not get water. They searched all the nearby places, but they could not find water. They were all very thirsty. Finally, Nakula finds a lake, right? Now, the lake, interestingly, had no living entities in it, not even a fish, okay, except for a crane which was standing there, right? The crane warns Nakula that the water will turn into poison if he drank it without satisfactorily answering the crane's questions, right? But then Nakula, of course, ignored the warning because it's a mere crane, right? Who would want to answer crane's questions when you're thirsty, right? And he drank the water. And of course, the water turned into poison, and Nakula fell down unconscious. So one by one, the other brothers came looking for the other brother. Eventually, found the brother lying, and they committed the same mistake. The crane says, "Don't drink the water without answering my question." All the four brothers commit the same mistake that Nakula commits, right? Then Yudhishthira comes, right? And he took the water to drink, right? The crane issued the same warning. Yudhishthira, but then Yudhishthira, of course, being Yudhishthira, heeded the warning, right? And about 125 questions were put to Yudhishthira by the crane, who then revealed to him that he is a yaksha, right? Now, this set of question and answers, 125 of them, is what is called the yaksha prasanna prashna in the Mahabharata part of it, right? In this, one of the most important questions posed by Yudhishthira was posed by the yaksha was, what is truly amazing in this world, right? Hare Krishna Mataji. Roshni Mataji, please carry
Hare
on.
Krishna,
Ahani
Guruji.
ahani bhutani.
अहन्यहनि भूतानि गच्छन्ति हि तिह्यमालयम् शेषार्थावरम् इच्छन्ति किमाश्चर्यमत्परम्.
Kim Ashcharyam Atparam, right? So the question was, what is truly amazing in the world, right? So what is Yudhishthira's answer? Hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment, but a foolish living being nonetheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. That is the most surprising thing in the world, right? So that is Yudhishthira's reply, right? So many answers Yudhishthira could have given, right? But his answer was really profound. We all make so many plans for our everyday life, right? For events which may or may not happen, right? We make one plan, we call that plan A, and then we make an alternate plan, we call that plan B, and then we make another plan that's called plan A plus, right? But then why is it that we are not making plans for something which is certain to happen, right? And it is only a question of time, right? Why is it that we are not preparing for death? Now Krishna says, think of me when you die, right? And as I mentioned yesterday, how is death described in the Vedic scriptures? It is like the sting of thousands of scorpions, right? This thing is the sting of 1,000 scorpions. That's how the Vedas, the Vedic literature describes death. So, how will you think of Krishna when you're suffering that 1,000 stings? How will you think of Krishna unless you have practiced for it the entire life, right? The entire life, in fact, is the time for preparing for that test, right? And yet we squander it off on all pointless endeavors, right? And that's why Yudhishthira says in this line, Kim Ashcharyam Atha Param, right? That the most surprising thing in this world is that no one is preparing for death, right? So that Yudhishthira says is the most surprising thing in the world. Now another short story. Okay, this is the story of Sage Bharata. This is right out of Srimad Bhagavatam only. Which canto I'm not able to recall, but anyway, this is out of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So the sage that you see here is Sage Bharata. Okay, he was earlier a great king. In fact, our country, Bharat, in India says the constitution says India, that is Bharat, right? So that Bharat comes out of this king, right? He was a very great king at his time, right? There are so many Bharats actually over. If you see India's history, there are so many different Bharats, but this is the Bharat from whom the name of our country is actually Bharat, right? Okay, so he was a great king, of course, no doubt about that. But he was also a great devotee of the Lord. He renounced the world early and took Vanaprastha. Yeah, remember I told you when we were dealing in chapter 4 about Varnashram, where the word ashram relates to duties as per the stage of life, right? Anyway, accordingly, the king renounced all his material possessions and the worldly pursuits, and he retired to the forest, right? Now, in the forest, he builds a hut for himself and started his life as a hermit. Now, in Bhakti, as I mentioned yesterday, there are 9 stages, right? I showed you a chart about it yesterday. It was a hierarchy, like one step. I mean, it is like the rungs in a ladder, right? So one stage is higher than the other stage. So you start from faith, and then you go to association of devotees, and so on, right? So the penultimate stage, the ultimate stage is prema, right? Pure love for Krishna, right? So the penultimate stage is bhava bhakti, right? So Sage Bharata, bhava bhakti is the stage of hope and knowledge that Krishna will definitely rescue you, right? So that is the stage of bhava bhakti. Now Sage Bharata was in this 8th stage, that is the penultimate stage. As I mentioned, the final stage is called the prema bhakti, and he was very close to going to Krishna, right? Time passed by, and he was doing the things that hermits do. And one day, a pregnant doe came to drink water near this pond, right? You see this pond here. So it came to drink water there, right? So there is a lion which caught wind of this deer, and it gives this terrifying roar. Okay, the deer, of course, is scared out of its wits, and it tries to get to safety by crossing the stream, right? This pond in one jump, right? Now, the fright and this consequent exertion that the deer indulges in causes the fawn to be born. It gives birth immediately, right? But then this exertion is not the doe is not able to take it, right? So it expires soon after it gives birth. Now there is this fawn that is lying in the stream and in the pond, right? So King Bharata is like meditating. Sorry, Sage Bharata. In the meantime, he's nearby. He's meditating, but he's watched all this. He's heard the lion roar. He's seen the fawn try and jump over the pond. He's seen that a fawn has been delivered, and that the fawn has fallen into the water and is not able to save itself, right? So he feels pity for the fawn, and he rescues it from the water. He takes it to the cottage, makes it comfortable with a fire and all that, and then gives it care and attention, and that fawn gets back to life, right? Then what happens is the problem, right? Then the kindly sage, he took the fawn under his protection, right? And he started bringing it up on soft grass, fruits, the things that fawns have, right? The fawn thrived under his paternal care of the retired monarch, and it grew into a beautiful deer, right? But then what happens is, you see this picture here, right? He starts to lose focus on his life as a hermit. He gets attached to this beautiful deer, right? He's been able to break away from lifelong attachments of power, position, family. He has been able to give up all those, but then he gets attached to this deer. Now, I mean, the fawn has grown into a deer now, right? And he becomes fonder and fonder of the deer. The more he becomes fonder, the less he is able to concentrate upon the Lord, right? Which is what a hermit is supposed to do, right? Now, whenever the deer goes out to graze in the forest, if it was running late, the mind of the royal sage would be very troubled. He becomes anxious, and he starts to think, perhaps my little one has been attacked by a wild beast, or perhaps there's some other danger has befallen it, or why is it has not come back to the hut by nightfall. And these sort of thoughts he started to develop, right? And then what happens one night? The deer did not come at its usual time, and Sage Bharata gets very worried, and he goes out looking for it at night, right? Now his mind and heart were entirely on the deer, worried sick about what misfortune could have befallen it, right? So it so happened that it was a very dark night, right? And the sage tripped and fell down the side of this mountain, okay? And it was a very steep fall, and he was severely wounded, okay? And he was lying with his last breath. He was very close to death, okay? And this deer coolly, casually just ambles across and then nuzzles him, right, with his snout, okay? The king, I mean, the sage is so pleased that he is able to find, he was able to find the fawn, I mean the deer, right? So this is the picture I wanted to focus on. See, he puts his arm around the deer, even it is dying birth, right? Dying breaths. He's still so attached to this deer. So his thoughts were entirely about the deer, and it was at that point that that the sage left his body, right? But because his final thoughts were about the deer, Sage Bharata, though he was a great king, though he had given up all the attachments and he had retired to live in the forest, and though he was in the penultimate stage of bhakti, he took birth in the next life as a deer, right? Now, why have I told you this? Because this is a story, as I mentioned, from Srimad Bhagavatam, which clearly establishes how important the last moment of life is. Because in the last moment, what you think of is what you will become in the next life, right? So that's why it is important, a very sober moment. Okay, 8.6. Hare Krishna, Roshni Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. यं यं वापि स्मरन् भावं त्यजति यन्ते कलेवरं तं तमेवैति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः.
Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Again, another categorical statement. Krishna says there is no fail. That's why it's like highlighted and in red, right? Because this is again uh, a guarantee, and therefore the point is to avoid attachment. But more importantly, in this context, the lesson is that we attain what we think about at death, right? That is what is mentioned in this verse. Now one can infer another lesson from the story. You see, the problem with sage Bharata was that he was alone, right? So had he been in the company of like-minded sadhus, they would have guided him, right? And the moment he started contemplating about his about this deer, they would have brought him back to the right track, right? They would have guided him, and they would have stopped him from this contemplation developing into an attachment. That is the importance of sadhu sangha, the association of saints. This is a simple verse, but then I think the story really puts it into perspective, right? So just remember this in this course, that in this basic level, that you that what you remember or think of when you die, that is the state which you will attain in the next birth, right? That is why in verse in the fifth verse, Krishna says, remember me alone when you die, right? Now interestingly, I'll just conclude that story of what happens to sage Bharata, right? In the next birth, after he was born as a deer, no karma is lost, right? I mean, he has gathered a lot of good karma, right? So though he is born as a deer, all the good karma bears fruit, right? Now this deer was a born Jatismara, right? So what is Jatismara? Jatismara means a person who is able to recognize, remember, recollect his past life, right? So Jatismara is a person who can recognize and realize and remember his past life. And this deer, though bereft of speech, realizes that I was so close to Krishna, then I got myself attached to this deer, right? And so it with renewed vigor, this deer disassociates itself from all its companions, the other deer, right? And it spends most of its time next to hermitages, where oblations were offered and the Upanishads were preached. And after its lifetime, the deer was again born as a human, right? And this time it bore the name of Jadabharat. I mean, that's the third birth, right? So first we had sage Bharata, then we had the deer, and then we have now Jadabharat, who was a truly realized person. Now in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a dialogue between him and a king, right? Which is very interesting to read. It's about the soul and its nature. Okay. So it was only in this birth that sage Bharata, who had become a deer, and then Jadabharat manages to break free from the vicious cycle of life, right? But it took him the 2 extra life cycles to accomplish what he could have done much earlier, right? So that's why the problem with attachment. Again, that portion where this Jadabharat explains to the king about the soul, again a beautiful philosophy. And please, again, I renew my request. Please read Srimad Bhagavatam. It's really a book that one should read without fail. Okay. Another story today. Okay, this, as I mentioned, is turning out for a lot of stories. This is the story of Ajamila. Now, this is a story to show two things. Okay, one is how powerful the name of the Lord is, and the power of thinking of Krishna. That's the second point. So first is how powerful the name of the Lord is, and two, the power of thinking about Krishna. This story is again from Srimad Bhagavatam only, right? So Ajamila was born in an orthodox traditional Brahmin family, right? And he was raised as a pure soul. He had learned his scriptures well, and he was capable of controlling his senses. He was a person who had accumulated a lot of good karma by the way he lives. And so what it happens that one day in the forest, he was gathering flowers for worship to the Lord, right? He happened to witness a beautiful prostitute in relationship with a drunkard. Now he knew, because he had studied the Upanishads, he knew that he should not watch what was happening. But then his mind said, just look for a minute, nothing is going to happen, right? So he hid behind a tree and was watching what was going on, right? And by the time he returned home, he was fully engrossed in lust. Okay, and he had made up his mind, right? He had made plans to bring the prostitute as a servant to his wife, of all things. Okay, so he went to the prostitute and he made a proposal to her. You come and live with me and work as at my house as a maid for my wife, right? So the prostitute agreed, but then asked for an exorbitant sum of money. Smitten as Ajamila was, he had no qualms agreeing to the demand, right? And the prostitute said, "All right, come, let's go." And she accompanied Ajamila to his home. But pretty soon, of course, it became evident that she was not just a maid to the wife of Ajamila, right? So of course problems arose, and Ajamila's wife leaves him. Ajamila's parents also leave him, right? So he is all alone now with this lady, and she still has demands, right? So he has to meet those demands, and so where is the income, right? So he has to take to evil ways of gambling and stealing and all that, right? So Ajamila also has children with her. He has nearly about 8 or 9 children with her, and due to his good karma in the earlier days, he names his last child as Narayana. Okay, so Ajamila was very fond of that particular son. He keeps calling him Narayana, Narayana, that son. Okay, not the name of the Lord. So that's an important distinction for the story. So he keeps calling his son. He's very affectionate with his last son, Narayana. Okay, so as time goes by, and soon it was time for Ajamila's turn to leave his body, right? So at that time when he was to leave his body, Yamadutas came to collect him, right? He was scared seeing them, right? I mean, they look terrible, they look horrific. So he's scared just looking at them. Okay, and he calls out to his son, right? Narayana, Narayana, right? And then as he is calling out, he understands the futility of calling out to a small boy, right? But then simultaneously he also remembers who he was before he had fallen, right? So since he had called out Narayana the last moment, Vishnu Dutas also came. Now, on one side are Vishnu Dutas who claim that he has taken the Lord's name. I have to take him back to Vishnu, right? On the other side are Yamadutas who say, "Oh my God, he's lived a life of sin. He deserves to come with us." So there is a huge argument between them, and this man is lying in the bed listening to this argument, right? So one by one, the Yamadutas explain what all he has done, and then the Vishnu Dutas say just one thing: he has taken the name of the Lord. Our dharma is clear. We have to take him back to Vishnu, right? So as Ajamila lies there, hearing about this argument, point and counterpoint, hearing his own sins being narrated, he realized what a wicked life he had been leading, right? And he was struck by the kindness of God, that even just because he had called Narayana at that last moment, he was still being saved, right? So eventually, it so happens that the Vishnu Dutas win the argument and the Yamadutas leave, right? So besides, in that moment also, Ajamila realizes his folly, of course, and he moves to Varanasi, right? And he continued the remainder of his life there, and he continues what he had discontinued so many years ago, those long years ago, right? And he leads such a pure life, and was a great devotee of the Lord, that the next time that he was to leave, only Vishnu Dutas came. So Yamadutas did not come at that time. So that again was a story to illustrate the glories of the names of the Lord, right? Okay, so these are the story part of it today. Let's examine the next sloka, 8.7. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Okay. So this is again another guarantee sloka, right? This is a guarantee. Krishna promises here, right? You will attain me without doubt. Oh, pen is not here. Okay. You will attain me without doubt, right? So this is, as I mentioned, another guarantee sloka. Bhagavad Gita is full of instructions, actually instructions on how to live, how to work, and even what to think of when you die, right? But Krishna makes it so easier for us. Krishna makes it all the more easier for us. You may ask, how do I think of Krishna when I'm working, right? No, let's apply it practically. Okay, the question is how to think of Krishna when I'm working. Now, does our mind not wander when we are working? We daydream, right? In spite of us supposedly doing work, right? Similarly, we can train our mind to wander back to Krishna, right? Whenever it goes and daydreams, instead of daydreaming of useless things, you can at least think of Krishna, right? So It's a thing that you can train your mind for. Okay. And think of him even when we work. Now, the order of the verse is important. You see what comes first here? Thinking of Krishna comes first, right? Work is only secondary here, right? So another important aspect that I wanted to mention here was that this one, which is highlighted and it is in red also, right? In the form of Krishna. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna. Okay, so Krishna is very clear. It is highlighted for emphasis. It's not just like that. It's highlighted for emphasis. You should think of Krishna as a person. And I've mentioned this before. Krishna is not some light or energy or some wave or something of that sort, right? God is a person. Okay, there are two clear verses down the line. After about 5 minutes, we will be examining those verses also, which again resonate the same message that God is a person, right? See, in the spiritual path, it is always a relationship with God, right? So what is the basic relationship in basic requirement in order to have a relationship? You should have two persons, right? That is the basic requirement in order to have a relationship. Now, these days there is this concept developing, right? Self-love. That is, you are in a relationship with yourself. That's nothing but illusion, right? You can't be in a relationship with yourself. You have to be in relationship with God, and then when God is a person, it takes two to have a relationship, right? So let's be very clear about that. Krishna is not a light or an energy or a wave or a sound. He is a person, okay, in his two-handed form, and that's the highest. Srimad Bhagavatam says, and I read it out in class also, that is the highest form. The full potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is displayed when he comes as Krishna, right? Okay, let's now have a look at this picture. Like, can you tell me who is this in this picture? Quickly on the chat box. Chaitanya. Okay, close by, but not entirely Chaitanya. Chaitanya is I mean, okay, perhaps okay, this is a kid. Okay, so it's not Chaitanya. Yes, Prahalad Maharaj.
Chaitanya
Roshni Mataji has got
Mahaprabhu.
it right. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so this is of course Prahalad, right? So Prahalad,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Mataji Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would look taller, right? This is a kid, so this is Prahalad. Okay. Now, Prahalad was born to Hiranyakasipu, right? Now, Hiranyakasipu was a great detester of the Lord, right? Now, when Hiranyakasipu's wife was pregnant with Prahalad, Narada Muni visited her, right, and was telling her about the glories of Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, of course. So while Narada was speaking, Hiranyakasipu's wife dozed off, right? But then Prahalad was hearing very intently, and at that time itself, he became a devotee of the Lord, right? Now, his father was extremely antagonistic to his son, and every day he tried to kill him for expressing his devotion to the Lord, right? Now, of course, the Lord does not tolerate any nonsense or any harm to his devotees, right? So he takes the form of Narasimha, right, and vanquishes Hiranyakasipu, right? So there you go, another story. Okay. Let's see, this is 8.8. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path. He, O Partha, is sure to reach me. So what is this verse saying? It is saying that it takes constant meditation on Krishna to go to Krishna. When we love someone dearly, we keep thinking of them, right? Shout back to our adolescent days, right? As I was mentioning, when you love someone, you keep thinking of them all the time. And how do you express our love for Krishna? You do that through devotional service, right? So the moment you say I love you to someone, automatically strings get attached, right? Responsibilities are attached. But then when you say I love you to Krishna, it frees you from all the attachment. All these strings are all snipped, right? So that's why I said attachment to Krishna brings detachment in respect of all the other things, right? So that was something which truly appealed to me when I first heard it. So I thought I should convey it in class. This is 8.8. Now let's see the next verse. 8.9. Also a very important verse. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. Now, I've color coded this verse for easy understanding. It's a direction on how to meditate. So who do you meditate upon? You should meditate upon the Supreme Person. Who is the Supreme Person? Krishna is the Supreme Person. because he is the one who knows everything. He is the oldest. He is the controller. He is smaller than the smallest, but he is also the maintainer of everything. And he is beyond all material conceptions, correct? So all these are the features upon which one should meditate upon. Now, the last line, I mean, this is also important that I mentioned again, right? About 2 verses down the line, we will come across a phrase or verse. This is that verse where Krishna asserts
Always a
again
person.
that he is a person, right? Now, the last line is also important, that being transcendental is beyond this material nature. Now, I've mentioned it several times in class that Krishna is not controlled by his own creations, right? He is the creator of the material nature. And so he is beyond them. And he is not affected by their Maya. What is the phrase called that? Adokshaja. Krishna is Adokshaja. That is one who has eternal knowledge and who can be reached easily through bhakti. So that is Adokshaja. That's a word in Sanskrit, of course. Okay, so this is Brahma praying to Krishna. Of course, Shiva praying to Krishna. All pure devotees are meditating on Krishna, right? Exalted devotees like Brahma and Shiva are always meditating on Krishna and are relishing the mellow. Shiva is meditating on the Sankarshana form of Krishna. Brahma speaks about this in the 10th canto and heaps praises on Krishna. And Shiva appears in the 4th and the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He teaches Goddess Parvati, his wife, of course, the glories of Krishna. Okay. And we will come back to that in a moment. Okay. So, but let's proceed further. 8.15.
Hare Krishna Guruji.
Hare Krishna.
मामपेत्य पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयम शाश्वतं नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गतः.
After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. I have mentioned this word before, Dukalem Asaswatam, right? This is a place of misery, a temporary place of misery. You will find that material people to sometimes suffering from illusions of grandeur, right? They may think they are leading a glamorous life in this Kali Yuga. But then I've mentioned this before earlier in this class itself, right? What does Canto 1, Chapter 1 say about this Kali Yuga? You'll be less fortunate, you'll have less lifespan, you'll have less memory, and so on, right? So this is the vision of how life truly is in this Kali Yuga, as mentioned in the Shastras. And yet we think that this is a glamorous life, right? So Dukhalem Asaswatam, Duk means sadness, right? Misery. And Alayam is a place. So Krishna says that this is a place of misery, right? And Asaswatam, Saswatam is permanent. Asaswatam means temporary, right? Now, you will not be able to find one person in this world who is free of misery. Anyone you take, sir, madam, are you free of misery? Are you happy? If you ask them, very rarely will you find a person who truly says yes, right? Most of the people, as a social norm, just superficially say yes, I'm very happy. But then when you get to know them in close proximity, you get to know that they are, of course, miserable, right? So that's why Krishna says in chapter 5, unless you surrender to Krishna and recognize that he is the master of the universe and the well-wisher of all living beings, you cannot attain peace. That's the peace formula I'm referring to, right? In chapter 5. Okay. Now, in spite of all this, in spite of Krishna saying that this place is temporary and this is a place of misery, what do we do in our in our life? We are in pursuit of happiness, isn't it? What all we do? I mean, we the first 25 years we study, right? Why do we study? We study to get a good job. Why do we get a good job? In order to earn money. Why do we earn money? Because eventually we think it will lead to happiness. But then Krishna is saying, you are not going to get that happiness here, because this is a Dukhalaya Masashvatam. It was constructed in that way, right? So in spite of all our pursuits of happiness, you're not going to find happiness in material pursuits. So that is something that we have to recognize and realize, right? The moment you attain a goal, a materialistic goal, supposing I want to buy a high-end phone, right? So I go and buy that phone. Do you think you're going to be, your happiness is going to be permanent? The very next year, not even next year, this 6 months, now it's a cycle of 6 months, right? So every 6 months, the top end mobile lineup is renewed, right? So every 6 months, this anxiety develops to get the next best thing, right? So these material things, there's no end to it, right? And that's why it is on a very low platform. And that is why bliss in the spiritual field is what is so much more higher, right? So we are nearing the end of the chapter, nearly another 5-10 minutes I'll take, and I'll conclude that with that, right? So let's proceed further. This is 8.17, right? From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated births and deaths takes place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Okay. Now, this is the heaven at war. We are generally given to understand that in Svargalok, there is a lot of enjoyment, right? But we also hear that wars take place ever so often between the devas and the asuras, right? So when there's a place of war, how would you expect to get peace, right? It's a wanton place, right? And hell, of course, we know that it's a painful place, right? So whether you go up or you go down, the same thing is going on. It's only a difference in degrees, right? So you will still have this janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, all of which still exists in all the other places also. Heaven is at war, earth is at war, and hell is just plain, right? So what is that one place where you are free of all this? That is in Krishna's Goloka Vrindavan, right? So this is set of three verses, which deals with Brahma's calculation. I just put it here so that we'll just quickly go through it. 18.17 to 19. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. When Brahma's day is manifest, this multitude of living things comes into being, and at the arrival of Brahma's night, they are all annihilated. Again and again the day comes, and this host of being is active. And again, as night falls, O Partha, they are helplessly dissolved. So two things have been highlighted here. One, that they are all annihilated, and two, they are all helplessly dissolved, right? So let's assume you go to the highest planet. The highest planet, as we see, there are 7 planets about us, ours, right? So Brahmaloka is the highest planet. Now we've already seen this calculation of Brahma's lifespan, right? But then we should understand, as I mentioned earlier, that none of these above worlds, that the 7 worlds above, are free from suffering, right? Their presence, and if the effect of suffering may be less, but they're definitely there, right? Even occupants of Brahma Loka are subject to suffering. There's no point, there's no place in the material world which is beyond suffering. That's the point I wanted to convey, right? The difference appears only to be in the degree of misery, right? And these two are important. Just keep in mind this annihilation and getting dissolved, right? Everything gets annihilated and everything gets dissolved. Okay, this is important because of what the next sloka says. This is 8.20. Yet there is another nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. Okay, this is 8.20. No explanation is required. Krishna's place is eternal and it is never annihilated. Everything else is subject to annihilation except this. And what is this place? Srimad Bhagavatam gives the answer. Okay, and it requires a little bit of explanation in this chart. Okay, now this chart is a very complicated chart. If you thought the calculations of the age of Brahma was complicated, this takes it to another different level. Okay, and this I think is the last slide before I think there's one more sloka, but this is the predominant sloka that we'll be dealing with, an explanation of this chart of Goloka Vrindavan. This is the Goloka Vrindavan. It contains both the material world and the spiritual world. We will be circulating this chart today in the groups. So please do have a read of these descriptions which are given by the side. Very interesting reading they make. So please do go through it when it is circulated in the groups, right? So when we look at this sky, let me just quickly explain this chart of Goloka Vrindavan. Now, what you see here is on the left side, the entire structure. Okay, this is the lower. Let's just divide it into 3 parts for the time being, right? This is the place where we are, okay, and this is Vaikundam and this is Goloka Vrindavan. Okay, now when we look at the sky, we are able to see the sun, moon, and sometimes other planets also, right? When with specialized equipment we get to see more. That is the material world. Like that, Srimad Bhagavatam says that there is more than that. That is the Goloka Vrindavan and Vaikunta planets are also circulating in the sky, and that sky is called the Brahma Jyoti, right? It is just an effulgence, light that comes from Krishna's body and his planet, right? So Krishna's planet is called the Goloka Vrindavan, where he lives in his personal 2-handed form. This is point number 1. Okay, where is Krishna? Krishna is at Goloka Vrindavan. How does he look there? He is in his 2-handed form. Okay, just remember this is stage 1. Okay, that is here. We are talking about this stage. Now below that is, below Goloka Vrindavan is Vaikunta, right? Now Vaikunta planets is where Krishna is present in his 4-handed form. Okay, There, then when he has to create the material world, he expands himself into Balaram. No, this Balaram is not the Balaram with Krishna. Okay, that's a different Balaram. I mean, the expansions are different. That is all. It's all Krishna, but the expansion is different. That is it. So Balram expands to Sankarshna. Sankarshna expands to Karodakshina Vishnu. Karodakshina Vishnu's breathing is so powerful that it creates universes, right? So ours is one such universe. So we prescribe to the theory of multiverse. Okay, so ours is just one universe out of many universes. And let me just focus in a little here. So as I was mentioning, this is Vaikunta planets, right? So this is Karodakshya Vishnu, whose breathing is so powerful that all these universes are born, right? So as I mentioned, is one such universe. This is stage 2. Now we go to stage 3, which is our position, right? Now our position, I think this will be a little more clearer. Okay, our position is this. Okay, half of this place is covered in water, right? And that's the Garbhodakshya ocean, right? Now on this water, Karnodakshya Vishnu expands to Garbhodakshya Vishnu. So the Garbhodakshya Vishnu is the Vishnu from whose navel this lotus stem emerges out of, and atop the lotus flower, Brahma is born, right? So Brahma is Atman. He does not need any mother to give him birth, right? He directly comes from Vishnu. Now Brahma is asked to create planets, and he is given that knowledge by Garbhodakshya Vishnu, and he is asked to populate those planets, right? So we are here in the middle, right here, Burloka, right? So we are here. There are 7 planets above us, and there are 7 planets which are below us, right? Now in all these planets, there are living entities. Now that is stage 3. Okay, that's the conclusion of stage 3. Now we go to stage 4. Garbhodakshya Vishnu further expands himself into Shirodakshya Vishnu. Now, who is the Shirodakshya Vishnu? The Shirodakshya Vishnu is the one who is in all our hearts, right? In the form of Paramatma. Every living being has this Shirodakshya Vishnu, right? Who is the super soul in all living entities. That is stage 4. Now, what is stage 5? Stage 5 is, apart from all this, there are many coverings, which is here, right? The circle that you see here, these are coverings, right? Each preceding layer is 10 times thicker than the succeeding layer. All this is under the supervision of Mother Durga, right? Durg, that's why, like, this is a jail, right? She's like the jailer. Durg means fort or jail, right? So she's also called Vaishnavi, right? She's a great devotee of Vishnu. Now she's working on behalf of Krishna, right? What are we now doing is we are trying to get from C class jail to A class jail, right? What is the difference? In C class jail, you won't get clean plates, right? So you petition the government, who are the demigods, right? So you petition the demigods, and then what happens? You get transferred to a better jail, A class jail, right? What happens there? You get clean plates. That is all you get, right? But then the point is, you can go back to the C class again. If you fail to maintain that standard that the government prescribes, you have to go back to the C class, right? Okay, now that is something we have to understand. Now this is just going up and down the ladder, right? That's not the point. It's still the prison, right? You have to break out of the prison. Okay, so what should you do? You have to break out of it. You see this minute white line that comes out of it. This white line goes here, right? Goes here. If you see this a little close up, you'll be able to see it in the chart when it's circulated in the groups. This white line goes here to Golaka Vrindavan. And what is that white line? That white line is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, right? So that is the line by which you have to catch that line, and it will take you to Goloka Vrindavan, right? So Krishna, where Goloka Vrindavan, of course, Krishna is then his two-handed form. So in this beginner stage, I understand this is complicated. Okay, this is a complicated chart. Okay, and Vedic this is Vedic astronomy is complicated, and do go through these side notes. They are very interesting. Okay, at this beginning stage, just understand this. Okay, it is adequate to understand that there is a place called Goloka Vrindavan. Okay, and what happens in Goloka Vrindavan? It is all the pastimes of the Lord. It is sheer bliss and joy all the time. Okay, now the dharma of the soul is to reach this place and to serve Krishna. Right now, when I say serve Krishna, please don't understand it as being a servant, like being a servant in this world. It is right there. It is entirely different. The Lord, by his pastimes, grants his devotees sheer bliss at Goloka Vrindavan. Right. That is stage 1, as I mentioned. Now, the next stage is, there is something called as Vaikundam, right? So in Vaikundam, Krishna adopts the 4-handed form with Gada, Sangha Chakra, Gada Padma, right? In Vaikundam, Krishna adopts as I mentioned, the four-handed form, and here he is in a very sober mood. He is in the office, right? Whereas in Goloka Vrindavan, he is like at home, very casual, very accessible. But in Vaikundam, he is very serious, right? It's like different moods of a person, right? So then we then understand, I mean, in this beginning stage, just understand that he expands from the Vaikunda stage. From he expands to different forms, right? I mentioned Balram, I mentioned Pradyumna and all that. So if you understand at this level, it is sufficient that there is something called Goloka Vrindavan, two-handed form, Vaikundam, four-handed form. Then he expands into several kinds of Vishnus, one of which is also Mahavishnu. We have Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shirodaksha Vishnu, Karodaksha Vishnu. I mean, all these are just forms of Krishna for his different functions that he discharges. Then we saw the coverings governed by Durga, right? So all this is what is conveyed in this Goloka chart. Now, the most important thing that you must understand is that this construct is a prison. That the construct in which we are in, this Garbhodaksha Vishnu and those 7 worlds I mentioned, which Brahma created, that is a prison, right? You have to break out of that prison. And how do you break out of that prison? That string that I told you to catch hold of, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that is the ship which takes you to Goloka Vrindavan, right? And that completes the Goloka Vrindavan chart. Okay, I'm sure it's a little complicated. Please take out time to read that portion in the sides. That will give you a better idea of what it is, right? And what is this? This is what Prabhupada calls as the windows to the spiritual world. This is what is happening in Goloka Vrindavan, right? Krishna is interacting with his devotees in different manners and is full of pastimes of Krishna, right? No doubt Krishna's devotees love him, right? But then Krishna reciprocates that love unlimited times. Is like multiplied by infinite number, right? How can, like, I mean, just imagine this. How can anyone go to Krishna and threaten him with a stick like Mother Yashoda does, right? It's all love. And Krishna recognizes it and reciprocates it 1,000 times. I mean, unlimited number of times, right? Right. So concluding, I mean, this is not the concluding sloka. There's just one more to go. This is out of the Mukunda Mala Stotra, right? King Kulashekara is one of the 12 Alvars. Alvars means those who are immersed in God. Okay, he was a king of the Chera portion of South India. Chera portion is present day Kerala, right? Srila Prabhupada has translated one of the works of King Kulasekara, and this verse is from that work. Okay, the book is called Mukunda Mala Stotra. Hare Krishna, Roshni Mataji.
Hare Krishna Guru. कृष्ण त्वदीय पद पंकज पंजरांतम न देव मे विशतो मानस राजहंसः प्राण प्रयाण समेय कफवात पित्तैः कंठ अवरोधन विदस्मरणं कुतः ते.
Hare Krishna. Oh Krishna, please allow my mind to immediately yield to your lotus flower-like feet. Just as the flamingo enters into the labyrinth of this lotus flower stems, when at the moment of my last breath, my throat becomes constricted by the actions of the bodily humors, air, bile, and phlegm, how will I be able to remember you? So this is a call out again for what Krishna says, remember me at the time of death, right? Remember in chapter 5, when I asked you to define old age, and then I explained it a little further. We saw that old age is the moment before death. Death can come anytime, right? There's no fixed time for old age. As Bhakt Prahalad said, it is the moment before death. It can come at 10, it can come at 90. So do we know when death is going to come for us? The answer is a resounding no, right? So the time to start is now. Now is the time to start the journey on the spiritual path, to start chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You cannot wait for a time, because that time will never come. You can't think like, let me get a little older, I will retire and then I'll start on my spiritual practice, because right now I'm a little too busy. Get your priorities straight. Work is always going to be there. Okay, so the time is now. Okay, now, as I mentioned, is now, all in capital letters, right? So NOW. So please start chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Okay, concluding verse for this chapter, 8.28.
वेदेषु यज्ञेषु तपस्सु चैव दानेषु यत् पुण्यफलं पदिष्टम् अतीति तत्सर्वमिदं विदित्वा योगी परं स्थानमुपैति चाद्यम्. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your devotion service. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing austere sacrifices, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. At the end, he reaches the supreme abode. This is again a sloka of assurance from Krishna, right? And another guarantee sloka. See what happens when you do karma kanda activities, you do it for some benefit, right? Now, here Krishna is clarifying that if you are engaged in devotional service, it is not as if that you will lose out on the benefits of karma kanda activities, right? Now, being engaged in devotional activities, Krishna says, will also attract the benefits that are usually bestowed on the karmis, right? But this is better because those benefits are temporary while this is permanent. So if you are in devotional service, Krishna is saying you will also get the benefits of those who are indulging in karma kanda activities, which benefit is temporary, right? But besides that, keeping that apart, you will also get the divine bliss, because devotional service is the easiest way back to the Lord, right? Now, let's put it from another different perspective, right? Arjuna is a Kshatriya, right? His dharma involves philanthropic activities. But if he spends all his time in devotional service, how can he fulfill his dharma of philanthropy, right? So Krishna clarifies that if you engage yourself in devotional service, it is not that you will lose the benefits that you would have otherwise got had you been a karma kandi, right? So we have to understand it like this. When you engage in devotional service to the Lord, it is as if you have done all the things that the Vedas say that you have to do, like study the Vedas, perform austere sacrifices, giving charity, pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. And the benefits that you will accrue from all these, had you done that, you will accrue it. You will get it if you just involve yourself in devotional service. That's why Krishna says here, a person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing austere sacrifices, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical or fruitive activities. So the benefits that you derive from all these activities, which are mentioned in the Vedas, you will get if you follow devotional service. But it goes one step further. Krishna says you will get eternal bliss because you reach, by following devotional service, the supreme abode. We should realize one thing very clearly, right? All this, studying the Vedas, performing austere sacrifices, giving charity, pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities is only going to keep you within this jail. You will keep going up to the 7 planets, but you will not break free, right? When do you break free? You break free only in devotional service. Okay. And with that, we conclude this chapter today. Quick overview of what happened in this chapter. 8 questions by Arjuna in 2 verses. Krishna answers 7 of those 8 questions in 2 verses again, and the last question is the rest of the chapter, right? It was relating to remembering Krishna at the time of death, and then remembering Krishna by Yoga Mishra Bhakti, that is mixed bhakti, right? And then remembering Krishna by pure bhakti. Then we saw material world versus spiritual world and the supremacy of pure bhakti in attaining Krishna. Right? With that, we conclude the chapter. There is a poll, so please hold on. It will just take 3 minutes. No, not even 3 minutes, just 2 minutes. Right? 3 questions. You just have to read it and answer. But before that, let's conclude today's session with our usual Guru Pranam. Om Angyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. And now for the poll, right? Let me just stop sharing and let's launch the poll. So what you're going to see now is questions appearing on your screen, right? So just read the question. There is 4 options which will appear below the question. You just have to select one of the option that you think is the right option. Now, all these questions are from the chapter today. Okay. So please read the question carefully, and then we will examine the correctness of it. Okay. So I'm launching the poll now. It's launched. Okay. So now you should be getting the questions on the screen. First question is, what is the name of the supreme abode of Lord Krishna? Options are Vaikunda, Goloka Vishnu, Goloka Vrindavan, Temple Srirangam. Okay. 2, how would you meditate on the supreme personality of Godhead as a person? Shruti Mataji, please select the option. You don't have to put it on the chat box. Okay. You will have to select it on the screen. Okay. Okay, so the second question is, how do you meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a person, as an energy, as light, as sound? Okay, now third question is, say true or false. All the higher planets, including Brahmaloka, are permanent and are never destroyed at
don't-
any time. Please choose. There's no need to say out the answer, of course. Right, goes back way
Sir,
back to school. Hare Krishna Mataji, yes. You're saying something?
Sir,
Go ahead.
please remove my co-host. Then only I can answer the poll.
Oh, right. Okay.
To answer the poll, you have to remove my co-host.
Mataji, you are an advanced student. You are in the advanced class, so you know all these answers, right? But anyway, since you've requested, I'll remove the co-host privilege. That was oh, I can't do it. It has to be Purnima
It's done,
Mataji.
Prabhuji. It's
Okay,
done.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Smachna Mataji. Thank you. Okay, this is how long has it been? It's been nearly a minute and a half. So out of 102 people, only 50% have voted. That's not enough. Why are people shying from voting? People are shying when you're called upon to vote for the government, but not for this. At least this is right in front of you. This is much easier than voting in the parliament or the state legislature. Always cast your vote. Make yourself heard, right? Hare Krishna. Jyoti Mataji says she's not able to. Oh, Jyoti Mataji is here. Hare Krishna, Jyoti Mataji. Good to see you back in class. Okay, 64% so far. 65. I think I'll stop it at 70 because we waited for nearly 2.5 minutes. Another 30 seconds perhaps. Okay, nearing 70. Let's see. Okay, 15 seconds to go before I stop the poll. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Last 5 seconds. Okay, so let's conclude. Okay, I'm stopping. I'm ending poll. Let's see the results. I'll just share the results in a moment. Okay, share results. So I believe you're all able to see the result. So let's see. What is the first question was? What is the name of the supreme abode of Lord Krishna? There were people who are 14 of the people have answered Vaikunda, and 9 people have answered Goloka Vishnu. Okay, apparently then I have not been clear. Goloka Vrindavan is the right answer, right? So I've mentioned this quite a few times in this chapter. Even in previous classes, I've mentioned about Goloka Vrindavan, right? So that is the abode of the Supreme Lord of Lord. I mean, Goloka Vrindavan is Lord Krishna, right? In Vaikundam, it is Vishnu, 400 form, right? So that's a difference we'll have to appreciate. Okay. Right. So what is the next question? How would you meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead? As a person, as an energy, as light, as sound? And I don't believe this. I've been repeatedly saying that Krishna is not an energy, Krishna is not a light, Krishna is not sound. And yet I've had at least 15 people. Then I guess I should appreciate their sense of humor, because I'm pretty sure that they realize Krishna is a person, right? He is a person. He says so in this chapter clearly, nearly thrice he says, right, in this chapter itself, that he is a person. Okay, so third question was, say true or false. All the higher planets, including Brahmaloka, are permanent and are never destroyed at any time. So true. Oh, yeah, right. Right. This is a true or false question, right? So this is false is the right answer. False is the right answer, but then I'm worried about the 30. It's a high percentage of those who haven't got it right. This is not a true statement. This is an incorrect statement. Perhaps the question wasn't clear enough. Perhaps, okay, I'll frame the question better the next time, right? Okay, so let's stop swearing. Oh, Krishnaveni Mataji is here. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Dandavat pranams, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. A very touching, purely devoted Sikshashtakam by Sri Chaitanya
Oh,
Mahaprabhu.
yes,
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
yes. Thank you so much.
Mahaprabhu ki jai. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
चेतोदर्पणमार्जनम् भवमहादावाग्निनिर्वापणम् श्रेयः कैरवचन्द्रिका वितरणम् विद्यावधूजीवनम् आनन्दाम्बुदिवर्धनं प्रतिपदम् पूर्णामृता स्वादनम् सर्वात्मस्नपनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्णसङ्कीर्तनम् नाम्नामकारि बहुधा निज सर्वशक्तिः तत्रार्पिता नियमितः स्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन् ममापि दुर्दैवमीदृशं इहाजनिनानुरागः तृणादपि सुनीचेन तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानिना मानदेन कीर्तनीयः सदा हरिः न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवतात् भक्तिर्हैतुकी त्वयि ऐनन्दतनुज किङ्करम् पतितं मां विषमे भवाम्बुधौ कृपया तव पादपङ्कज स्थितधूलीसदृशं विचिन्तया नयनं गलदश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदरुद्धया गिरा पुलकैर्निचितं वपुः कदा तव नामग्रहणे भविष्यति युगायितं निमेषेण चक्षुषा प्रावृषायितं शून्यायितं जगत् सर्वं गोविन्द विरहेण मे आश्लिष्य वा पादरतां पिनष्टु माम् अदर्शनान् मर्महतां करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विददातु लम्पटु मत्प्राणनाथस्तु स एव नापरः हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे प्रभुरा शिक्षाष्टक श्लोक ये पढ़े सुने कृष्णे प्रेम भक्ति तारा बड़े दिने दिने. This is the Falasthuti of this whole Sikshashtakam, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity, Prabhuji. I have a very beautiful memory, and today happens to be my son's 20-year-old birthday.
Oh, wonderful.
And,
We all wish him a very
when
happy
I conceived,
Krishna conscious birthday.
he's named Pradyumna, Prabhuji. He's Krishna Pradyumna,
Oh,
and my husband is Vishnu. My
okay.
daughter is Vedamrita Shraddha. So I keep chanting their names, and I thank God because you know that it is that time when I conceived this boy, I started reading along with the purports Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, so good, Mataji.
So
So good.
bless him, Prabhuji, on this platform,
Hare
and
Krishna. We
I
pray
wish
for.
him. He gives me music in all my uploads in YouTube.
I see.
So
Okay.
I just wish him to become totally Krishna conscious. Of course, right now he's a young boy into all the material music and all, but please bless him to come out a complete Krishna conscious devotee in future. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. One of the best blessings that I have heard from a Vaishnava is Krishna Matirastu. That is, I'm sure you know the meaning. I'll just explain it.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Krishna
Hare Krishna.
Matirastu means Krishna, may Krishna give you the intelligence. Madi means intelligence, right? Krishna give you the
Exactly.
intelligence to understand Krishna's message. So that
Mm.
perhaps is the highest blessing someone can bestow on a person. So we all pray for the well-being of your son. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Both the kids, they read Bhagavad Gita every day, one shloka. That is, but that is a minimal thing, I feel. So
Okay.
rest all is the Vaishnava's blessings only. Thank you so much. Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Mataji, do you have 5 minutes? Can you please go take us through the translation? The translation is of
Yes,
course very,
Prabhuji.
very
Sure,
important.
sure, Prabhuji.
Purnima
I
Mataji, can you
definitely.
please share the screen again?
Hare
This
Krishna.
Shishashtakam was composed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, right? But the first time he goes to Jagannath Puri in the temple of the Lord of the Universe, right? Jagannath. That's where he composes the Shishashtakam, and I let Krishnaveni Mataji explain the verses.
Verses I would explain, Prabhuji, and this is actually also explaining the conclusion of your 8th chapter, Vedeshu Yagneshu Tapassu Chaiva Daneshu Yatpunya Phalam Pradishtam.
Yes, Mataji.
Atyeti tatsarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. You need not even do the austerities like tapasya, dana, all these things. Everything is taken care of, just Harinama. And that is what has been given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this Shikshashtakam. Thank you so much for this translation. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for the humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus, you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaja Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of overflowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on the end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separations, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. That is Yuga. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world or in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. If anyone recites or hears these 8 verses of instruction by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his ecstatic love and devotion for Krishna increase day by day. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishaye Namo Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna Mataji. So many students, you have taught this is really great service. You have complied with what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed.
That
So
is
many
my
people.
prayer now. And that's what is right by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. May bless me to have sung myself, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you
I
so much,
wish, I
Mataji.
wish,
Thank you.
I wish for everyone of Hare Krishna.
Question and answer session.
Devotees can also raise their hand for the questions. Jayesh Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Jayesh Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Prabhu, I had one question that in one of the slides we said that at the last moment, whatever we think of, we become. That right?
Yes.
What will happen if someone is, someone dies in coma, like he's not even conscious to think anything? So what happens like at the last moment, he cannot think of anything.
So
then
that's why you should think of the Lord right from the beginning.
So is it like till the time he was having consciousness, whatever he remembered, he
It
becomes?
depends on what sort of coma, actually. I mean, medically speaking, you can be in coma and you can still have consciousness, right?
Consciousness. So,
And
but
yeah.
it's like if without consciousness.
But if
what
you're brain dead, then logic at least says it will be the last thought that you have when you're conscious. I mean, that is just logic.
Okay.
But I really am not entirely aware because I don't know how it works. But it should be that, right?
Right.
I'll do one thing. I'll pursue on this question. What you're asking is about what happens to a person who's brain dead, basically, right?
Yes. Who cannot think anything.
When the brain dies, what is it? That person is just a vegetable. They call him a vegetable, right? When the brain is dead and the body is alive, they just call him a vegetable. So there's no conscious thought. So conscious thought is what Krishna is referring to here. So the last conscious thought he would have had before the brain died, that would be what is applicable, right?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. And one more thing, just a feedback, Prabhu. Like I have attended other sessions as well, but the beauty of this session is like you make it very interactive. That's like best part of it. We all are like involved. Okay, let's see. Like so Prabhuji will ask something, let me answer it, and today was that whole thing. So these all things are getting added up. That's like so amazing. It's so nice.
It all gets slowly added up. See, first time itself, when you do all this together at one time, it gets. I was informed that it gets a little too overbearing. So slowly as it goes by. But then there's nothing further to add. It's just that's why I wanted more feedback from the devotees, right? So these are all inputs from the devotees, actually. This is not something which I conceived of it myself. So these are all inputs from devotees. So that's why I'm saying, please give me your inputs. They are very important because they will govern how the program mutates further. And I'll share the results before any change is implemented. I'll share the results with you. It's a very transparent, democratic process. Okay. It's a long-lived democracy.
Exactly. Yeah, we were not even knowing that this whole thing is facility is there, but it's like very nice thing. And if you ask for the vote, so I'll vote for that. Like it should be daily thing.
Yes. Definitely. We will implement it. We will implement.
Yeah. Okay. And you already make it interactive from the day one. That's like the best part.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you for the
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Pratima Mataji wants you to explain 24th and 25th shloka once again, Prabhuji.
24th and 25th. Just a moment.
How can we control how to die in Uttarayana and Dakshinayana?
Oh, that was only given to Bhishma, right? Just let's go to that sloka. 24th, is it?
24th and 25th, Prabhuji.
Okay. Oh, verse 24 or slide 24?
Verse
24.
Shlokas.
Okay. We didn't deal with verse 24, Mataji, today. It's in the book, is it? Yeah, from the book, you mean? Yeah, because we did not. I did not make a slide on verse 24. So let me just have a look at verse 24. because the slide verse 24 did not feature. Just correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the slide had verse 24. So what does verse 24 read? Okay. Those who know the supreme Brahman attain that supreme by passing away from the world during the influence of the fiery god in the light at an auspicious moment of the day, during the fortnight of the waxing moon, or during the 6 months when the sun travels in the north. And 25 is the mystic who passes away from this world during the smoke, the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or the 6 months when the sun passes to the south, reaches the moon planet, but again comes back. Okay, so this is not happening for us, not for us, not for this yuga. Okay, so this is for previous yugas, because we of course cannot, we are not Bhishma, right? We don't have Ichamrityu. Okay, so this is not for us. This is for people of the previous yugas. Not applicable to us. We are just mere mortals compared to even mortals of previous yugas. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Kajal Mataji wants to know why Krishna is spelled as KRSNA.
Okay, that's the Sanskrit spelling, because that's it. That spelling also denotes how you pronounce, right? So that is the Sanskrit spelling. If you see, let me just explain it a little further. If you see Prabhupada's book, the translation, you have small dashes, dots above and below the alphabets, the English alphabets, right? So those are indications of how a particular word, a particular sound has to come. For example, any letter which has a small dash on top, you have to elongate it. Like, for example, Krishna, right? The A at the end has a small dash on the top, so you have to prolong that, so it's Krishna, right? Let me just have a look. I just took a example out of it. Yeah, Krishna has the small a, right? And also I'll give you another example because it's right in front of me. Uvacha is to speak, right? Now there are two a's in Uvacha, right? UV, there's a there, and then CA, right? Now this a, the first a has a dash on top, right? When it has a dash on top, you're supposed to elongate that sound, so it becomes Uvacha, right? So without that dash, it's just a short sound. With that dash, it becomes an elongated sound. I hope that I'm just giving an example, right? I hope that clarifies. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, this question is from Sheshagiri Rao, Prabhuji. Did Arjuna understand? Prabhuji is talking about the chart, Goloka chart.
Yeah, Goloka chart.
Did Arjuna understand this in the battlefield without any chart?
No, the Goloka chart was something that we wanted the devotees to understand. It doesn't have a direct relevance from out of the Bhagavad Gita, but then you need to know what is Goloka Vrindavan. You need to know these are this even more fundamental aspects than the message of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's upon these that the principles are enunciated. So when I say Goloka Vrindavan, many of them don't know what Goloka Vrindavan is. They might have heard of Vaikundam also, but Goloka Vrindavan is not very often heard, right? So this is a chart to explain that entire concept of Goloka Vrindavan. Where is Goloka Vrindavan? Where is Vaikundam? How is this Vedic astronomy mentioned in the books, in the Vedic literature? So all this is just an introduction, so that you have an idea of all these basic concepts, right? Because we are born in this great country, there's already so much knowledge in this country. We should have that basic introduction, an idea of it. Then it's up to the devotee to follow up and build their knowledge thereupon. But then our duty is to give that basic understanding, right? Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, this question is from Kalpana Mataji. Mataji wants to know how kids can be made understood about death and birth and death and remembrance of God. How, I'll read the question.
Yeah.
How about kids who does not even know what the world is and God is?
Yeah. So it's the duty of the parent. As a parent, it is our duty to inculcate Krishna consciousness from a very young age. Of course, they will not be able to understand it immediately, but then they imitate, right? I mean, children learn by imitation. So when they see you chant, they will also chant, correct? And it's not the intention behind the chant, it's the mere act of taking the Lord's name that is good enough for the Lord, right? And when children chant, it's raised to the power of n, right? So there is no these are things that the parent has to do. It's a duty of the parent. Now that you've begotten a child, it's your duty to ensure that the child is Krishna conscious, has Krishna consciousness, is inculcated with Krishna consciousness. Make him understand, make him or her understand. And that's why ISKCON Mangaluru has Sunday schools for children. We also have regular kids class for kids from age 6 to 12 is one group, and then from 13 to 16, I think, is
18.
another group, right? 16, Mataji, Punya Mataji would know.
18,
Punya
18.
Mataji is a teacher there.
18,
18 itself. Okay. Wow, till 18, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So 6 to 12 and then 13 to 18, 2 batches, and it's regular like this batch. But of course, in the 6 to 12, we will not be going so deep into death and all that. But then broadly, we'll just explain I think Purnima Mataji would be able to convey this point better than I do. No, Mataji, you're taking classes for children, so please carry on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you rightly told, Prabhuji. Children always imitate what the parents do at home, and they follow. So first we have to be the role model, and then they suitably follow your route. Yes, there are cases where they may oppose also, but still slowly things can change.
Yeah.
We have to put them into a practice. We have to give them the right direction, probably tell them good things about or the advantages. So definitely they will make an effort.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, this question is from Sulochana Mataji.
Oh, okay. Oh, Sulochana Mataji is unmuted. Okay, Mataji can ask the question. Well, Acha, she's that has been removed. Okay, can you make her co-host again? I'd like to hear the question.
Yes, I will unmute Mataji. Mataji, I've unmuted. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you, first of all, for your recitation in the morning. It was very, very, very pleasant, melodious.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Yes.
Thank
carry
you,
on,
sir.
Mataji,
Thank
please.
you, Prabhuji. Thank
What
you,
is the
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. What is
I
the
wanted
question?
to know the flowers that we offer to Krishna, where and how should it be thrown on the next day?
Oh, okay. Nice question, Mataji. It should not just end up at the usual place.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
How should the flowers be thrown on the next day? One day we are offering, suppose today we offer the flowers to Krishna. Next day, where and
yeah, I understood. How do you dispose of the old flowers that has been offered to Krishna?
how and
correct?
where it should be thrown?
See, when you offer flowers to Krishna, the moment you offer the flowers to the Krishna,
I can't hear you, Prabhuji.
Purnima Mataji, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Prabhuji.
Yeah. How to dispose of? Yes,
Right.
yes.
I understood the question, Mataji. So this is my answer. The moment you offer flowers to Krishna, right? The flowers have attained their dharma, right? That's their janma chapalyam, right?
Yes, sir.
So once you offer it, it's complete. But then we have to treat those flowers also with respect, right? So the easiest thing to do is we all have home gardens, right? We have pots, we have plants in them. Those flowers can be put in those plants.
Yeah.
Okay, so that will take care of how you dispose them. Instead of just putting it in the dustbin, it's not the cleanest place, of course, in the world. This would be a more honorary way of disposing them. Just put it in the other flower pots that we have, so that it is the cycle of life.
But
right?
every day it gets no, but
are you trying to say something? Because I'm not able to hear you.
but it gets accumulated, no, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, it depends, of course, how much. It depends upon
The pots will get
the
accumulated.
flowers, the number of gardens that you have.
The pots will
But-
get accumulated with the flowers, isn't it?
Yeah, see, so basically the point is this: if you put you just have to dispose them off with some amount of honor. But then if you can't do it, then what can be done? This is a way that that it just immediately came to your
Yeah.
mind. You can put it in the flower pots that you have, that should hold quite a lot, right? These are just flowers. You just have to crush them and put them into the flower vase that you have, right? That flower pot that you have. Because I'm sure you would have quite a few flower pots, isn't it? Usually they do, right? Every home has a home garden. So that is one way. Otherwise, what you can do is you can just gather the entire thing, keep it just a
but
minute.
suppose yeah.
So you can gather the entire things, keep it like for a week, and then go and dispose it off in a flowing river that you have nearby. Almost every city is nearby a flowing river, so you can also dispose of the flowers like that. Or as Kajal Mata's Jay is saying, you can just dry them out and then put it in the pot. See, the point is this: just don't throw it in the dustbin, because it goes with all the other filth, right? So the point is, it may not be the most apt way of disposing them. So anything else other than that is fine. Okay. That should take care of it. Hare Krishna. Let's see. Any other questions? Oh, there are several suggestions in the chat box about how to dispose of flowers. Pratibha Mataji says mostly below any big tree. Then Kajal Mataji says dry them first, Mataji, then put them in a pot. Pratima Mataji says, after we offer, we should touch those flowers to our head. After that, we can dispose it of anywhere. Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, so these are pointers that you have received, Sulochana Mataji. I hope that answers the question. Any other question?
Yeah, one more question, Prabhuji.
Okay.
This is a question from Pratima Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
We reach Vaikunta or Golaka Vrindavan after death, but we can go to Kailasha during life. So which is better according to you, Prabhuji?
Amazing how profound these questions are. Really, really very profound, these questions. Amazing questions. As I understand, your question is, should I go to Goloka Vrindavan after death, or should I go to Kailash while I'm alive? Isn't it possible to do both? When you are alive, please make a pilgrimage to Kailash, right? And when you and live your life in such a way that you eventually reach Goloka Vrindavan, correct? Can't we do both? See what Namanishta Prabhuji says is very apt actually. हमें कुछ तोड़ना नहीं है, जोड़ना है, right? So we want to join. So we've already mentioned the exalted status of Lord Shiva, right? So Shiva is not just a demigod; he's a prime Vaishnava, right? So try and do both. It's not impossible. I think it's a thing that everyone should end up like you have a life goal, right? That must be the life goal. That's a very nice life goal to have, because going to Kailash is not easy. It's not an everyday trip, right? It's truly a lifetime journey. So nice question, Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
We have done with the questions.
Okay. So we are concluding class a little early today. I'm sorry I've taken more time for explaining these verses. But probably that will be changing in the near future, because from what I went through of the response that I've received so far, a lot of people are not comfortable with this exceeding the time limit. So I'll make a conscious effort to keep it in time limit. But please, I will again circulate that feedback form. I once again request the devotees to please, for those who have not filled it up, please fill it up, because it really matters a lot to me, right? Hare Krishna. So let's conclude the session. Mataji, if you could unmute them, we'll conclude with Jai.
Yes, Prabhuji, it's done.
Okay, so that's how we usually conclude. Bhagavad Gita ki Jai.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai.
Jai.
And Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
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 Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for
Hare
joining.
Krishna.
Tomorrow is chapter 9. The heading of chapter 9 is Rajaguhya, right? The most confidential knowledge. It's like the suspense thriller of the year, right? Why is it called the most confidential knowledge? We'll know that tomorrow. Okay, so please do attend class tomorrow. It will be revealed why it's called the most confidential knowledge. Right? Hare Krishna.
And we'll get more polls.
Yes, certainly, Prabhu. We'll have polls tomorrow. Certainly.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining us today. Hare Krishna. I'll disconnect.
Thank you.
Disconnect the
Thank you,
session now.
Prabhuji.